Welcome to the domain of creation. So today I want to do a quick video on the lore so far of everything that has been introduced and everything that is yet to be introduced. Down in the description below, I'll put a timestamp, so if there's anything specific that you want to understand, you can kind of just skip to it, so this way you don't have to sit through everything. I do want to start off really quick with thank yous. Thank you to everyone and anyone who has supported this journey so far. This project has been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of work, but the reception has been really cool, and I really appreciate it, guys. So I just want to give you this lore so you understand what there is to look forward to, and to clarify any confusion or questions you might have. I initially was debating making this video a little more serious and having like a specific script and like vibe to it, but I wanted to do something a little more informal, something that's a little more fun, and honestly it should probably make it a little bit quicker. So I've also included a map, so we'll review that map as well, but just so this way I preemptively set the tone for you guys. This is supposed to be quick, easy, and fun. So let's get started. In an alternate universe, by the 2070s, climate change has reached a point of no return, where humans, no matter what actions they try to take, are incapable of recovering the ecosystem. There's complete and total ecological collapse. This then leads to widespread famine, there's infertility, there's disease, there's all these resource wars that are going on. Everyone's fighting over whatever is left. In reaction to this, the UN then starts funneling whatever remaining resources they have into Operation Elpizo. So at this point then it is 2073. This is just around the time that the ecosystem officially is acknowledged that it's annihilated. They funnel all the resources into creating these 3 Dyson sphere arc vessels. The plan is to get as many humans into them as possible, cryogenically preserved embryos, the whole 9. Then the idea is to have these 3 vessels launched into space towards the galactic center, which has a increased density of stars, which theoretically should then give those vessels a greater chance of finding habitable planets. This gets completed just before the nuclear war that then breaks out around the year 2083. The records are a little sketchy for reasons I'm sure you can imagine. A war lasting less than half an hour, billions of people dead, any remnant, any remains of the ecosystem that's left is completely annihilated, irradiated, it's over. This then leads to a nuclear winter that's then going to last for 20 years. Yes, it's that bad. For about 20 years. So around the year 2100, we then see the end of the nuclear winter. In the meantime, a station has been created by the UN, the ISC, which is the International Scientific Collective. In Antarctica, this base is the last remnant of any advanced civilization. Any major scientific minds have been brought there. The base is really the last of humanity's greatest, and they're the only ones after the war that remember anything about Operation Elpizo, and they're the only ones that have any kind of technology even capable of keeping any kind of records of Project Elpizo that we know of currently in the domain of creation. The next major event occurs with the Starship Asteri. Shortly after leaving Earth, the Starship then all of a sudden is overcome by what is only ever really referred to as the anomaly, which is this bizarre random wormhole. So the AI Atlanta does everything it can to collect data, tries to evade this phenomena, but it's this singularity, this anomaly, just consumes the ship. So the ship, which was still in communication with the ISC back on Earth, it loses communication, and the operators on Earth deem that the mission for the Starship Asteri is undetermined. They don't assume that the ship is destroyed or lost, but as far as they know, they never have official contact with the ship ever again. However, what does occur sometime later, they realize that the AI Atlanta that is operating the Starship launches a satellite probe that then orbits the anomaly. This satellite then is called Phos, which is light in Greek. And the satellite then continues to monitor the anomaly and transmits that data back to Earth. So this is just a key point to keep in mind. It's a major point on the map, and we'll circle back to this. The Starship Asteri is then shot out into space. They survive the anomaly, and they are transported to Zeus, this beautiful yellow star, which is host to a gigantic, titanic gas giant, which they then name Metis. And Metis, amongst its many moons, happens to have 3 habitable moons. The Starship Asteri and the colonists hit the absolute astronomical jackpot. The Asteri Scientific Committee then begins research and colonization almost immediately after discovering these moons. A continued theme through the domain of creation is the use of Greek mythology and just Greek language for a lot of the names, just about every scientific name for everything from the flora to fauna to the celestial bodies in the domain. I just wanted to do something that wasn't Latin, and I just didn't want to do something that was made up, and I'm a big fan of Greek mythology, so that is where a lot of that inspiration comes from. First, we're going to take a look at Metis. The gas giant Metis is named after the first wife of Zeus, a literal and mythological titan. I decided to make Metis purple, honestly, because I thought it was a nice looking color. In nature, naturally, it is very highly unlikely, based on my research, to have a primarily purple gas giant. But I decided to go with it anyway. I'm still debating whether or not to do a specific episode just on Metis. A part of me would also love to explore the possibility of life on a gas giant. I think that's a subject that's very interesting. So we may delve more into that at some point in the domain of creation. But as of now, the most important thing to understand is that Metis is the driving force behind all of the life in this system around the star Zeus. The gravitational pull, the magnetic field, all of it. Without Metis, none of this would exist. None of this would occur. And as we continue on, and in all the entries we've already had, Metis is always in the sky. It dominates every single view that you have of the planet. It dominates every single season, the plate tectonics, the volcanism, everything. Metis is truly the ruler of these habitable worlds. And as we explore more of the human consciousness around Metis, we'll find that this Titan also dominates the consciousness of the colonists as well. The first planet, actually, that I initially designed, even before any of the other lore, even before Metis, was the planet Athena, named after my cat. but also named after the goddess of wisdom, the Greek goddess of wisdom. Athena is an ocean world. It's primarily covered in ocean with only small island continents of land to speak of at all. And it was the first episode also that I created as well for the channel. So this one has like a very special place in my heart. But the current theory is that Athena was once primarily a ice world. It's suspected that Metis formed further away from Zeus initially during the first phase of creation in the Zeus solar system. And then Metis moved closer to his host star. So in that process, while it brought Athena, its first daughter, to Zeus, the moon then warmed up, the ice then melted, leading to vast, seemingly endless oceans. And of course, with liquid water, as far as we are currently aware, comes life. And so it is also then suspected that Athena of the habitable moons was most likely the first to have life. The Asteri committee, of course, that is the first colony they build, is the Athenian Research Center. It is towards the equator of the moon, so it's in a warm, somewhat temperate area. And they also have the Athenian research vessel, which does regular tours around the moon as well. There's also then a submarine division. So there is constantly, at every single level of this world, there is constantly research and exploration being conducted. And of course, as with Earth, the same with Athena, the endless oceans are extremely difficult to chart, to understand, to map. So it's an obstacle for the Athenian researchers, especially given that there's very little land on this particular world. But the abundance of liquid water has then also made it a lot easier for the colonists to thrive, as they have an endless supply. The next moon is Erichthonius, named after the only child of Athena, was the first ruler of the city of Athens, was a half man, half snake. Long story there. But usually referred to simply as Eric. Erichthonius is also, similar to the mythology, an adopted child in the Metis moon system. It's suspected that Erichthonius was at one point an independent planet, and as Metis then moved closer to Zeus, Erichthonius then fell into the gravity of the gas giant. Because of this, it is then also concluded that the gravitational forces of Metis reawakened Erichthonius, as before the planet came into the influence of the gas giant, it lost power in its core, similar to that of Mars, in that the convection currents underneath its crust, within its mantle, stirring all of the metallic elements, which then provides the celestial body with magnetosphere, helps to maintain an atmosphere. Without Metis, Eric would have slowly, similar to Mars, faded into a cold, barren world. But with the influence of Metis, it was reawakened. And the life that existed on Eric, it retreated to live in the subterranean tunnel systems. But after the introduction of Metis, the introduction of volcanism, life was able to reclaim the surface world and evolve. And what makes Erichthonius particularly interesting is that these creatures, many of them reptilian in appearance, have convergently evolved to mirror many of the mythological creatures of Earth folklore. In other words, Erich is home to dragons. Many of the flora on Erichthonius would actually be considered invasive because they are genetically related directly to similar organisms found on Athena. Currently, the theory holds that through panspermia, some type of seeds or spores were able to transport themselves from Athena to the surface of Erich, aiding in its new genesis. Currently, there are several different research facilities and settlements scattered all throughout Erich, each one of them specializing in various areas of study, such as geology, biology, and many more. Although this planet has been settled and is well researched, it is still considered extremely dangerous due to its vast, rocky, mountainous landscapes, its often arid environments, and its deadly predators. Last, but certainly not least, the moon Nike. Nike is the last of the major moons of Metis and is a twin to, I would say, Venus specifically. It has a thick atmosphere. The atmospheric pressure is off the charts. But what makes Nike unique is its high levels of chlorine. And these high levels of chlorine give Nike this green color. And on its surface is boiling pools of sulfuric acid, barren rock, raging winds. It's hell. Despite these harsh conditions, life has evolved, or at least life has learned to adapt to the extreme conditions that exist now on Nike after this planet has experienced a greenhouse effect. This is a runaway greenhouse effect in which this could have been only a couple million years ago that this planet saw this drastic change in its atmosphere's composition. And of course, similar to the other moons, there is a research facility currently on Nike. However, this one is much smaller in comparison to the other facilities on the other moons. Very few colonists have any interest in visiting this place for any type of research. And now, amongst all of this, within the Asteri scientific community, there's also a department known as Extraterrestrial Affairs. As the colonists have been journeying through the three major moons and across the Metis system, they have been slowly accumulating evidence suggesting that there was a complex, advanced alien civilization that occupied at least the three major moons of Metis. Researchers have discovered some type of facility on the moon Erich near its pole. In a barren, isolated section of this moon, within this strange geological formation, are these great tunnels and giant doors that are slowly seeping with radiation. In addition to that, amongst these tunnels and doors are giant amphibious beasts Researchers have also found vast quantities of what appear to be metallic shell-like relics. No one's 100% sure exactly what they're meant to be, if they're currency or some type of component to machinery, but vast quantities of these strange artifacts exist. Meanwhile, under the waves of Athena, researchers have uncovered a sunken ship. This strange spacecraft has been under the waves of Athena for no one sure how long. The researchers have reported when entering into the ship, the interior is made of types of flesh and cellular materials. What seems like organic fluids dripping and leaking. Researchers are classifying this find as the first example of biomechanical technology of alien origin. The vessel holds several organ-like systems, creates strange, inexplainable sound. There's a lot to be learned. Another major find of the colonists was on the moon Hades. Hades is one of the smaller moons of Metis, and after their computers detected organic materials and other strange energy signatures, they decided to land a small party onto the surface. The tragedy then occurred. However, it was revealed that the moon Hades acted as some sort of cemetery, a resting place for this advanced alien species. The most recent discovery was by the colonists of Nike. On an expedition, they had uncovered a lost ancient city, shaped like a ziggurat built into the landscape itself, surrounded by pools, lakes, I would say, of sulfuric acid. Upon its discovery, they have been able to make several different trips into the structure itself, finding various statues, hieroglyphics, writings, chambers, adding to the mystery. What was this civilization? How long ago were they here? What destroyed them? Meanwhile, all this time, the automatic systems of the Starship continue to transmit towards the anomaly on the side of Metis. And somehow, through science unknown, a signal went through, reaching the last satellite probe produced by the Starship right before it entered into the anomaly. The probe was still functioning. Everything it retrieved is sent back to Earth, and the very few satellites left connected to the South Pole Research Center. Though overall, most of the residents of Antarctica weren't interested in what was happening amongst the stars. However, there's always someone to listen to the message. And that's part one of the lore explained. I originally wanted to do it as like one giant piece, but now I'm realizing it's probably better as two. So we'll have another video on the, what I'll call the extended domain of creation universe. There are 3 other planets outside of the Zeus star system that we can explore. And eventually there's other things I want to do completely separate from all this space stuff. So we'll stay tuned on that. But in the meantime, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. The support is appreciated. Definitely, if you'd like to, you can like and subscribe. That'd be super cool. Let me know if there's anything in particular you want to dig into. I definitely have no problem explaining more and getting more in depth on anything. Again, this was just a brief overview, super brief overview. There's definitely more in depth on just about everything we talked about that should be coming up, and they'll be getting their own videos individually. But again, thank you really for just the support. Thank you for being here. Thank you for existing and creating and being who you are. Take care, stay well, and never stop exploring and never stop imagining.